Imagine a world collapsing around you. The sky darkens, the ground shakes, the systems we've built begin to unravel. This is the image that lingers not just in our movies and books, but deep within the human psyche. It's not new, it's ancient, and it's personal. Carl Jung believed that deep in the unconscious, we carry universal images, archetypes that shape how we think, feel, and act. Among these, one stands out in times of crisis, the archetype of the apocalypse. It isn't just the fear of nuclear war or climate disaster. It's the deep sense that something within is breaking down. The apocalypse archetype appears when a structure, be it cultural, psychological, or moral, is no longer sustainable. It signals an ending, but also a beginning. Have you ever wondered why we're so fascinated by stories of the world ending? Why we watch films about zombie outbreaks, planetary extinction, or societal collapse? It's not just because they're thrilling, it's because part of us resonates with them deeply. There's something seductive about destruction. In a strange way, we crave it, because destruction clears the way for something new, something purer, something more real. The old must fall so the new can rise. That's what the apocalypse represents, not just death, but rebirth. When your old identity, your false self, your borrowed beliefs crumble, what's left? That's the real question. In dreams, apocalyptic images often arise when someone is on the verge of transformation. The house catches fire, the world floods, the streets are empty. These are not signs of doom, they are symbols of change. The psyche is preparing for renewal. We project these inner symbols outward. We watch dystopian shows, we scroll through headlines, we fear collapse. But what if the collapse is already happening within? What if the breakdown of our external world reflects the unraveling of outdated parts of ourselves? The apocalypse archetype doesn't appear randomly. It emerges when the collective psyche is out of balance. When truth is ignored, when the soul is silenced, it is a psychic alarm. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." The apocalypse is pain on a mythic scale, a forced awakening, a call to confront what we've repressed for too long. And yet most of us run from it. We medicate, distract, scroll endlessly. But the more we ignore it, the more it shows up, louder, darker, more chaotic, until we listen. This archetype isn't asking you to become a doomsday prepper. It's asking you to become conscious, to face the endings in your life with open eyes, to let go of what no longer serves. Because after the fire comes clarity, after the storm comes silence, after the ending, a beginning waits. So when you feel the weight of collapse inside or out, ask yourself, what needs to die so something truer can live? This is the path the apocalypse archetype offers, not escape, but evolution. Why are we so drawn to stories of collapse? Not just on the news, but in movies, books, and even dreams. Because, as Jung taught, the apocalypse lives inside us. It's not just global, it's deeply personal. Every heartbreak, failure, or identity crisis is a miniature end of the world. And in those moments, something false dies so something true can rise. We project this inner breakdown outward. We fear climate change, war, and societal collapse. But often it's our own internal disintegration we're sensing. The apocalypse archetype arrives when the soul is ready for change, but the ego resists. It breaks what's no longer real. It burns illusions. And though we fear it, part of us longs for it. Because we're tired of pretending, of roles, of control. The end offers release, a chance to begin again. Your personal apocalypse may not look like fire or flood. It may look like silence, emptiness, a slow unraveling. But its purpose is the same, to clear a space for rebirth. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Meet it. And you'll see, it's not destruction. It's transformation in disguise. The apocalypse doesn't announce itself with noise. Often it begins in stillness, when your old goals feel hollow, your old identity cracks, when the things that once gave you meaning no longer fit. Jung called this enantiodromia, the reversal of things. When you've gone too far in one direction, the unconscious brings the opposite. The achiever burns out. The pleaser becomes defiant. The strong break down. This is not failure. This is the soul's revolt against a life not aligned with truth. In the archetypal apocalypse, what dies is not you, but the mask you wear. the story you've outgrown, the world you built on someone else's expectations. These inner collapses are painful but necessary, because only through the breakdown can something more real emerge. That job loss, that heartbreak, that sudden existential crisis, they aren't punishments, they're invitations. You're not broken, you're being broken open. And when you stop clinging to what's ending, you'll start to see the ruins aren't empty, they're sacred ground, the beginning of who you really are. The apocalypse archetype is not a prophecy, it's a pattern, a cycle written deep into the unconscious. It whispers through ancient myths, biblical stories, even sci-fi thrillers. But all these outer tales mirror an inner journey. Jung believed that when the ego becomes inflated, too certain, too rigid, too disconnected, the self pushes back. Not with gentle reminders, but with crisis, collapse, revelation. Think of Noah's flood, or Ragnarok, or the Book of Revelation. They're not just cosmic catastrophes, they're metaphors for psychic upheaval. They show what happens when the old world of the psyche must be torn down so a new center can emerge. This is the death of false certainty, of the persona, the role, the armor. And in its place, the deeper self begins to stir. That's why end-of-the-world stories are secretly about beginnings. Behind the fire is purification. Behind the fall is awakening. Behind every ruin is a seed. So when your own apocalypse arrives, whether it's a shattered relationship, a lost dream, or an inner dark night, don't only grieve, listen. Ask what part of you is being called to rise from the ashes. Because the end isn't the enemy. It's the doorway to something far more real. In Jungian psychology, every apocalypse begins with a splitting. The conscious mind clings to stability, while the unconscious demands transformation. And in this clash, chaos is born. This is why so many people experience anxiety, depression, or addiction during periods of deep change. It's not a malfunction. It's an inner war between the known and the necessary. The self, the totality of your being, is trying to break through, but the ego resists. It fears death, not realizing that transformation is not annihilation. It's initiation. The archetype of the apocalypse breaks illusions. It strips away what you thought was unshakable. The job, the relationship, the belief system. Not to destroy you, but to set you free. And here's the paradox. The more you resist the fall, the more violent it becomes. But the moment you surrender not in defeat, but in awareness, you begin to see the deeper pattern. The darkness isn't empty, it's fertile. The end isn't meaningless, it's mythic. So when your life falls apart, ask, what is this collapse asking me to become? That's not a metaphor, that's psychological reality. Because the archetypal end of the world is always the beginning of individuation, the birth of your deeper self. You are not being punished, you are being remade. Have you noticed how end-time fantasies are always loud? Explosions, monsters, firestorms. That's not just for drama, it's projection. A collective projection of repressed inner chaos. Jung warned that what we don't face inwardly, we enact outwardly. Our neglected shadows become doomsday gods in movies. Our unlived pain becomes alien invasions. Nuclear holocausts, collapsing systems. Why? Because we fear looking within. But the real apocalypse, the one that heals, is quiet. It happens when you sit still long enough to hear what your unconscious is truly saying. That's when you realize the monsters were never out there. They were in the basement of your psyche, waiting to be acknowledged. And when you face them, really face them, they change. Not because you conquered them, but because you integrated them. You become more whole, less controlled by fear, less seduced by destruction. Because the moment you bring light into the dark, the apocalypse ends. In mythology, apocalypse often comes before rebirth. The phoenix burns, the tower falls. But what follows? A garden, a kingdom restored, a new heaven and earth. This is not coincidence. This is psychological truth. Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of things to turn into their opposite. After destruction comes renewal. After fragmentation, unity. But there's a catch. You can't fake the fall. You must truly let go of the false self, the identity that was built to please, to protect, to survive. Only then can the deeper self emerge, not as a fantasy, but as lived reality. So when you feel like everything's ending, step back. Ask yourself, what truth is this pain trying to uncover? Sometimes you need to lose the map to find the terrain. The archetype doesn't destroy meaning, it destroys illusion. What comes after is real. Every apocalypse reveals values. When systems break down, we learn what we clung to: security, control, image, routine. These are the ego's scaffolding. But in crisis, all scaffolding collapses. And then you stand naked before yourself. This is terrifying, but also liberating. Because only then do you discover what truly matters: the soul, the truth, compassion, courage. Apocalyptic moments don't just destroy, they purify. They burn away distractions. They strip the non-essential. And in that emptiness, something sacred can finally speak. Jung called it the self, the organizing principle of your entire psyche. It's quiet but unshakable. It doesn't promise comfort, it promises wholeness. So ask yourself, what would remain if you lost everything? That answer is your rebirth. As you walk through your own symbolic apocalypse, something miraculous happens. Your perception changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this awakening in me? The world outside might look the same, but inside you've shifted. You no longer chase perfection. You chase truth. You no longer avoid fear. You face it. You stop performing your identity and start living your reality. This is how you become a psychological adult. Not by building walls, but by letting the inner temple collapse and having the courage to rebuild it from the ground up. That's the gift of the archetype, not destruction, but individuation. And it's not a one-time event. It's a lifelong cycle. Break, reveal, reform. Each time deeper, each time truer. So now we arrive here, the end, but also the beginning. Because if you've truly listened, something has already shifted in you. A whisper, a knowing, a seed. Jung said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But what if your unlived life is buried under your own fear, your own denial, your own resistance to collapse? Then maybe the apocalypse isn't punishment. It's permission to let go, to grow, to begin again, not with the old scripts, but with a deeper authenticity. So here's the call. Don't fear the fall. Step into it. Let the illusions burn. Let the false self die. Because the true you, the one who's been waiting all along, is on the other side. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone in their own collapse. Subscribe for more Jungian insights. Let's walk the inner journey together.